on your mixer. So I use a KitchenAid stand mixer to make my royal icing. I know some people don't, but it seems to be fairly common that people use a KitchenAid stand mixer for the royal icing. And there are a few attachments that you can use, but the attachment that I prefer and recommend for royal icing is the paddle attachment. Now mine has this little silicone edging on it, and I like this for when I'm making dough and for royal icing as well. You don't have to have this though. This is not a necessity to avoid air bubbles. I think it really helps personally. I find that I don't have air bubbles as bad when I use the silicone one as opposed to the naked one. I guess that's what you call it, uncovered. But this is the attachment you want to use. If you are using the whisk attachment that looks like this is great for making homemade whipped cream or meringues or a variety of other things, but it's not ideal for making royal icing. And what this does is it incorporates air. So when you incorporate air, naturally you're going to have air bubbles. So we don't want to use that one. And this is the dough hook. I've had people say, do you want to use the dough hook for cookie dough? And I just wanted to touch on that real quick before we move on. I don't use my dough hook for anything other than making bread. Occasionally I'll make some homemade bread when I'm feeling really domestic and really fancy. And usually when I want to buy something and talk my husband into it, I'll make him some homemade bread. My granny and my great grandmother, they both love homemade brioche bread. So for their birthdays and like Christmases and anniversaries, sometimes I'll make homemade bread. But that is the main thing that I would use this dough hook for. I never use it for royal icing, and I don't use it for cookie dough. I also use my paddle attachment for cookie dough. But the paddle attachment is going to be nice and flat, and that is going to prevent the air bubbles from forming in the first place when you're making your royal icing. And y'all, if you need a good royal icing recipe, you can find my recipe at saragracecookieco.com. Go to the tab at the top that says free resources and run your mouse down to the point that says my recipe. That'll give you my sugar cookie recipe and my royal icing recipe as well. And I think those are both really good recipes for having no spread sugar cookie dough and royal icing that doesn't have terrible air bubbles and is really easy to work with.